Internet buddy! The Possum Head Chronicles is back by popular demand. By popular demand, I mean a couple people posted in our forums sarcastically that they missed it. Newsflash forum posters, your sarcasm does not always come across, so this is what you get. In Series 2 of the Possum Head Chronicles, we'll be cleaning a woodchuck skull together. We should call it the Woodchuck Head Chronicles. Too late. This decrepit thing is in bad shape. But on the plus side, it has basically no flesh on it to start, so it shouldn't be too big a job to clean. Because it's so delicate, I'm hatching a crazy plan about how to preserve it for display once it's clean. Just what do I have in mind? Will it work? Does anyone care at all? All these questions and more will be answered in future installments. You know what, I take that back. Not more, just those questions. It's the Possum Head Chronicles Series 2 Woodchuck Skull Cycle. Howdy online, compadre. It's time to look in on the woodchuck skull we started cleaning last week. This thing had pretty much zero soft tissue on it when we started, so after just one soak in water and a gentle brushing, it's already in good shape to move on to the next stage, degreasing. That's good news for us because getting all the flesh off of a skull is not only the hardest and most time-consuming part of the process, it's also by far the least telegenic, so probably no one's disappointed we're missing out on it here. Look at these crazy front teeth, they're pretty cool. People use all sorts of different degreasing agents. We're gonna use regular old ammonia again. As you can see, this skull is stained even browner than the possum skull we prepared last time, so it'll be interesting to see how clean we can get it, depending, I guess, on your definition of interesting. Back into the skull cleaning shed it goes. We'll check on it again soon, in the next installment of the Possum Head Chronicles. What up, web buds? It's time to check in again on the woodchuck skull we're cleaning. Last week, as you'll probably recall, we left it soaking in ammonia for degreasing purposes. Now we'll rig up our usual strainer contraption so we can pour out the ammonia without losing any teeth or other small pieces. This part looks familiar to you probably, if you watched our first skull cleaning project. In fact, is it just me, or does this whole thing seem kinda rehashy? Oh well. Now we can rinse the ammonia out of the soaking bowl and off the skull parts, and it's ready for hydrogen peroxide. This will brighten the color of the bone, though by how much, it is difficult to guess. We'll find out pretty soon in the next installment of the Possum Head Chronicles. Ooh, look, it's fizzy. Hola, Internet amigo. It's time to look in again on the progress of our latest skull cleaning project. Last time, we left this woodchuck skull soaking in hydrogen peroxide in hopes it would whiten it. And boy, did that do the trick. You remember what it looked like before, right? I don't know why it keeps surprising me how well this works, but it does. Now we can pour off the bleaching agent and bring this project inside for rinsing. Careful not to lose any teeth down the drain. It's looking really good. We're gonna let it dry a while, and soon it'll be time to get it ready for display. On the Possum Head Chronicles Series 2 Woodchuck Skull Edition. Salutations, Internet friend. You down with PHC? Yeah, I know you. Well, I know you online. Anyway, it's time to sit down once again with our groundhog skull project. It's all clean and white and dry now, so the next thing to do is glue it together. There's not much to this step, really. But we won't let that stop us from milking it for its own video. Probably mentioned this before, but the teeth on this thing are really crazy. Big, long, curvy things that sit all the way back in these bone sheaths. I guess they grow from back there, I don't know. I'm not a dentist. But there it is, all reassembled and looking good. It's so little and fragile though that I had this idea to try to cast it in this plastic resin for display. I've never used this stuff before, so we'll just have to see how it turns out. Spoiler alert, I mess it up. To find out how exactly, watch the next installment of the Possum Head Chronicles. What's shaking online, buddy? It's time to start in on the final phase of our woodchuck skull cleaning project. Here's the casting resin we're gonna use. I've never worked with this before, which will become obvious soon. The little bottle is catalyst, which you add to the resin to get the curing process going. Here are a couple molds I got. We'll use one of these to cast the skull in a dome of resin, like a paperweight. The mold is shaped just basically like a bowl, but we intend our finished woodchuck skull specimen paperweight curio thing to sit on its flat side, obviously the open side of the mold, so we'll pour it upside down. We want to suspend the skull in the stuff, so we'll have to do it in at least 2 pours, building the thing in 2 layers. First, we measure out the resin, and then we add catalyst, just a few drops. Exactly how much you're supposed to use is determined somewhat by math, but also somewhat by art. There are several factors. It seems to matter not just what volume of resin you have, but also how thick you're pouring it and which layer you're pouring, so it's easy to get wrong, which you'll see as this process unfolds. Now to place the cranium portion of the skull in the resin. I read we're supposed to get the object coated in this goop before we situate it in the mold. The idea is that this keeps air bubbles from adhering to the thing, but here's a problem I didn't anticipate. If you're casting coins or a paper artifact or something, this step is probably enough to keep bubbles off the outside of the object, but this skull has air trapped inside it. So that's going to turn out to be one of our problems. We have to let this layer set up a little bit before we pour the second stratum. So I'm making a dumb little scaffolding sort of thing to suspend the skull while the resin hardens. So far so good, I guess. We'll just have to see what happens when we pour the second layer next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Hello chumps! Time to execute next actions in our groundhog skull preparation project. Here's how we left it at the end of last week's video. In real time, this is several minutes later. The first pour of resin has set up a little bit and has taken on a kind of a jellyish consistency. We stir some catalyst into our second batch. This needs to be a slightly different mix from the first pour, but as you'll see, it's easy to figure wrong as to exactly what the formula should be. We'll pour this layer over top of the first layer and get the jaw situated in place. Then all that's left is to wait. How is it going to turn out, I wonder? Well, I already know, but maybe you wonder. You'll find out next time in the thrilling conclusion to the Possum Head Chronicles Series 2 Woodchuck Skull Edition. Hello there, online Skull Cleaning Club members. It's time for the much-anticipated Series 2 finale big reveal episode of the Possum Head Chronicles. As you'll recall, the way we left our groundhog skull project was that we'd finished pouring the resin and were waiting for it to cure. I wish I had time-lapse of this, actually, because it changes in visually apparent ways pretty fast. Over the course of, I don't know, maybe an hour, the stuff loses that gross, murky, yellowish cast and turns clear. It also makes crazy, squeaky, creaking noises like a pond freezing. While this was happening, you could see before your eyes these little fissures forming in the resin, which was also cool to watch, although bad news for our results. Let's pop it out of the mold and have a look. As you can see, it's kind of jacked up. There's just a lot of irregularities to it, including bubbles in there, which I'm thinking maybe got forced out of the bone as the temperature cranked up. The resin gave off a lot of heat while it was curing, probably too much. There's a big crack on the bottom of the mold, as you can see. And the instructions on the resin can indicate that's a result of overheating, which is caused in turn by adding too much catalyst. If I was going to do this again, and I think I might just try adding very little of that catalyst. I'm not sure what the downside of that would be, except maybe it would take longer to cure, which I don't think I care about that much. Anyway, not a great success, except I will say that I learned a little and it was fun, and maybe same for you. So now that I'm saying that, sure, let's call it a great success on those grounds. And I'm still going to keep the thing even if it is kind of a mess. I hope you enjoyed that. Here endeth another series of the Possum Head Chronicles.